Close your eyes. Imagine a forest, acres upon acres of pine and birch and rolling hills. Herds of endangered horses have bred and increased their numbers. Packs of wolves roam the landscape. Rare birds roost all over. No humans, except for a sporadic few. Is this paradise? Maybe it is. You can go there. Take a vacation. Just a few ground rules. Don't pick the mushrooms, definitely don't eat them. Don't eat outside, and don't smoke outside. Now, does that sound like a place you might want to go? Does it sound like a retreat worth taking? Open your eyes. You're standing in Pripyat, the last place on Earth you probably want to be. It's been almost 30 years since Pripyat was a bustling metropolis of 50,000 residents. But it will be a long time before it is again. 20,000 years before humanity can return for any serious length of time. For those who don't know, or those who don't remember, in 1986, Pripyat was the site of the worst nuclear disaster in history. Chernobyl reactor number 4 melted and exploded. Metric tons of radioactive material poured into the environment and plumed into the air. People were evacuated, but the damage was done. Children born with cancer and birth defects for years after. Aid workers died within days of arriving at the site. Thousands more died from exposure to radioactive materials later. The death of trees and other wildlife. The impact Chernobyl was felt for miles. It will continue to impact our planet for centuries to come. Inside, a molten corium flowed like lava. When it finally cooled, it formed something dubbed the elephant's foot. It weighs at least several tons due to its composition, and is near the top of the list in terms of dangers created by man. The foot was so deadly that at the time of its formation, 30 seconds of exposure was enough to kill. 10 years later, 300 seconds was enough to kill. Today, an hour in its presence would be fatal. So there's that. When they took photos, they had to use a mirror and shoot around a corner. The first camera they attempted to use was destroyed by the radiation. At the time, most Soviet citizens knew nothing. Gorbachev didn't even hear about the explosion that occurred, so why would the average communist citizen know anymore? All they knew was something bad happened. A month later, the infamous sarcophagus was constructed and took 200 days to complete. It encased reactor 4 in 300,000 cubic meters of concrete and used over 7,000 tons of metal framework to keep it in place. However, due to need in the area, the plant continued to run until 2000. The remaining 3 reactors were shut off in 1991, 1996, and 2000 when an official ceremony was held. So what does the world look like since humanity gazed upon the face of fear? For one, the locals are bored. Many live just outside the exclusion zone, but don't seem to care. A number are employed by the booming tourist industry that's springing up in Ukraine. Over 10,000 a year make the trek to the area. Those tourists are mostly from neighboring countries, as Americans seem to be too frightened by the possible presence of mutants to make the trip. For some, it has become a novelty, akin to the world's largest ball of twine. A few might even fish the radioactive rivers and ponds. There's an extreme risk the deeper you go into the exclusion zone, but that doesn't stop some from treating it as a suggestion. The television station Animal Planet has even gotten in on the craze, sending the show river monsters to Chernobyl to hunt for a killer mutant predatory fish. They found fish, and those fish had mutated, but mostly it's adaptations to deal with the levels of radiation they're exposed to. Just like the vast majority of the wildlife. 30 years in, and the exclusion zone appears to be more of a nature preserve than anything, even if mankind has scarred that natural environment, at least for the next 200 centuries. Animals are thriving without humans in the area. The animal life may be different than we understand, but they've adapted the environment. They breed, they hunt, they continue on almost as if mankind had no impact. Almost. There's still major problems, and still massive setbacks to the ecology of the area. Nothing is as it should be. Inside the plant, black fungi have been found growing. They consume radiation using immense quantities of melanin in their skin. This might be a good thing as melanized fungi could be used to clean up radioactive disasters, like Chernobyl or Fukushima. The downside is that the same fungi that would make cleanup easier, would also be a detriment. Black mold kills people, and if it's encouraged to grow, it could infect humans on a staggering level. In addition, scientists are noticing a disturbing phenomenon in the exclusion zone. While flora and fauna have rebounded in the face of the radiation, something else hasn't. Necessary microorganisms and invertebrates are missing from the food chain. While that doesn't sound like the biggest problem, it has the potential to become catastrophic. Without the microorganisms, fungi, and invertebrates, the cycle of life has been broken. Leaves that fall and plants that die aren't broken down and used by the surrounding environment. What this does is leave tons of material on the ground where it sits and waits. Normally, this wouldn't be a horrible problem to have, but in the Chernobyl exclusion zone, it could spark yet another disaster. Quite literally, every year, wildfires creep towards the dry litter. A major fire threatened the zone in 2012, 2014, and another fire consumed an abandoned village in April 2015. The flames never fully encroached, but the possibility does raise serious concerns. The biggest cause for concern is a reintroduction of the radioactive elements that spilled out of the reactor almost 30 years ago. The large water retention ponds exist in an extremely precarious situation, threatening to rupture and dump radioactive water into the nearby river. While it wouldn't cause major issues, the notion of thousands of gallons of radioactive water washing downstream is more than a little upsetting. On top of that, the brush fires in the exclusion zone threaten to do the same thing, reintroduce elements back into the air. By burning radioactive plant matter, the particles are carried up in the smoke and dispersed across Europe. However, so far no fire has done so. Radiation is leaching down into the ground, away from the surface. Plants are regrowing, and show little signs of being contaminated. Still, the site of the worst nuclear accident in history is a point of worry, and will remain as such. Though, not all news is bad news. 2015 marks the year that the new safe confinement structure was set to be finished. The NSC was partially funded by the Chernobyl Shelter Fund, and designed by French firm Novarka. The NSC was originally intended to be completed in 2005, but suffered a number of delays. The completion date was pushed to 2007, 2008, 2012, until eventually settling on 2015. However, after additional setbacks and a new round of investor funding, the new date is sometime 2017. So the question becomes, will it finish this year or will construction continue into 2017? By the time it has been completed, the NSC will have cost investors nearly $2 billion USD. In the meantime, scientists get a chance to study man's effects on his surroundings. How will plants and animals react to an apocalyptic event? How long will it take for life to overcome the adverse effects? It gives us great insight into nature's ability to adapt to change, as well as its ability to heal itself. At some point in the distant future, someone will be wandering through what used to be the Ukraine and stumble upon an ancient post-warning of radiation. By then, the disaster that was Chernobyl will be long gone, as will the effects. What will that world look like? How will nature have changed itself to deal? Given enough time, it might even revert back to the way it was before the devastation. One can only hope. Thanks for watching.